Welcome to the English learning community. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode. Today, we're diving into something truly special, a story that's not just going to improve your listening and writing skills, but also inspire you to take your English to the next level. So, grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's get started. Breaking the hesitation habit, how to speak English confidently. Once upon a time, in a sunny coastal town in Spain, there lived a 17-year-old boy named Mateo. Mateo was a dreamer. He loved music, soccer, and spending hours by the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. But there was one thing that held him back, his fear of speaking English. Mateo's town was a popular tourist destination, and every summer the streets were filled with visitors from all over the world. While his friends eagerly chatted with tourists, practicing their English and making new friends, Mateo would hang back, too nervous to join in. He knew some English from school, but every time he tried to speak it, his words would get tangled, and he would end up mumbling or staying silent. "What if I say something wrong?" he would think. "What if they laugh at me?" These thoughts haunted him, and over time they turned into a habit of hesitation. Mateo became known as the quiet boy who always stayed in the background. One summer, something happened that would change Mateo's life forever. His school announced an exchange program with a high school in the United States. Selected students would spend 2 weeks living with an American family, attending classes, and exploring a new culture. Mateo's heart raced when he heard the news. He had always dreamed of visiting America, but the thought of speaking English every day terrified him. That evening, Mateo sat on the beach, staring at the horizon. He could hear the laughter of tourists nearby, their English words floating in the air like a language he couldn't quite grasp. He sighed and picked up a small stone, tossing it into the water. "Why is this so hard for me?" he whispered to himself. Just then, his older sister Lucia walked over and sat beside him. Lucia was confident and outgoing, and she had always been Mateo's biggest supporter. "What's wrong, hermano?" she asked, using the Spanish word for brother. Mateo hesitated, then told her about the exchange program and his fears. Lucia listened quietly, her eyes filled with understanding. When he finished, she smiled and said, "Mateo, do you know why the waves keep coming back to the shore, no matter how many times they crash?" Mateo frowned. "What do you mean?" "The waves don't stop because they're afraid of crashing," Lucia explained. "They keep going because that's what they're meant to do. Speaking English is like that. You might crash a few times, but you have to keep going. That's how you'll get better." Her words stayed with Mateo long after they left the beach. The next day he made a decision. He would apply for the exchange program. He didn't know how he would overcome his fear, but he knew he had to try. A few weeks later, Mateo received the news. He had been accepted into the program. His heart was a mix of excitement and dread. The departure date was just 2 months away, and he knew he had to prepare. He started by setting small goals for himself. Every day, he would learn 5 new English words and practice using them in sentences. He also began watching English movies with subtitles, repeating the dialogues out loud. One day, while walking through the town square, Mateo noticed a group of tourists struggling to read a map. Vox. His first instinct was to walk away, but then he remembered Lucia's words about the waves. He took a deep breath and approached them. "Excuse me," he said, his voice trembling. "Do you need help?" The tourists looked up, surprised but grateful. "Yes, please," one of them said. "We're trying to find the old cathedral." Mateo pointed in the direction of the cathedral and explained the route in simple English. The tourists thanked him, and as they walked away, Mateo felt a surge of pride. It wasn't a perfect conversation, but he had done it. He had spoken English, and the world hadn't ended. As the weeks went by, Mateo continued to push himself. He joined an online language exchange group where he practiced speaking with native English speakers. At first, he was nervous and made many mistakes, but his conversation partners were kind and patient. They encouraged him to keep going, and slowly, his confidence began to grow. Finally, the day of the exchange program arrived. Mateo said goodbye to his family and boarded the plane to America. His host family, the Millers, welcomed him warmly. They had 2 children around his age, Emma, who was 16, and Jake, who was 15. Mateo was nervous at first, but the Millers made him feel at home. The first day of school was a challenge. Mateo struggled to keep up with the fast-paced conversations, and he often found himself nodding and smiling even when he didn't fully understand what was being said. But he didn't give up. He reminded himself of the waves and kept pushing forward. One day, his English teacher, Mrs. Carter, announced a class project. Each student had to give a short presentation about their home country. Mateo's heart sank. The thought of standing in front of the class and speaking English made him feel sick. But he knew this was his chance to break the hesitation habit once and for all. He spent days preparing his presentation. He practiced in front of the mirror, in front of Emma and Jake, and even in front of the family dog. On the day of the presentation, Mateo's hands were shaking as he walked to the front of the class. He took a deep breath and began. "Hello," he said, his voice steady. "My name is Mateo, and I'm from Spain." As he continued, he felt his nerves melt away. He talked about his town, his family, and his love for music and soccer. By the time he finished, the class was clapping, and Mrs. Carter was smiling proudly. "Well done, Mateo," she said. "You should be very proud of yourself." Mateo felt a sense of accomplishment he had never felt before. He had faced his fear and come out stronger on the other side. Over the next few days, he noticed a change in himself. He was no longer afraid to speak English. He made new friends, joined conversations, and even cracked a few jokes. When the 2 weeks came to an end, Mateo felt a mix of sadness and pride. He had grown so much during his time in America, and he didn't want to leave. But he knew that this was just the beginning of his journey. As he boarded the plane back to Spain, Mateo thought about everything he had learned. He realized that breaking the hesitation habit wasn't about speaking perfectly. It was about speaking with courage. It was about embracing mistakes, learning from them, and keeping going, just like the waves. And so, Mateo returned home with a newfound confidence. He continued to practice his English, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He knew that the world was full of opportunities, and he was ready to seize them, one word at a time. Buggering. When Mateo returned to Spain, he felt like a different person. The boy who had once hesitated to speak a single word of English now walked with his head held high, eager to share his experiences with everyone back home. His family noticed the change immediately. His mother hugged him tightly and said, "Mateo, you look so confident. Tell us everything about your trip." That evening, the family gathered around the dinner table as Mateo shared stories about his time in America. He talked about the Millers, his new friends, and the school project that had pushed him out of his comfort zone. His younger brother, Pablo, listened with wide eyes. "I want to learn English too, Pablo exclaimed. "Will you teach me, Mateo?" Mateo smiled. "Of course I will, but remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about trying, even if you make mistakes." The next day, Mateo returned to school. His classmates were curious about his trip, and for the first time, Mateo didn't shy away from their questions. He answered in English whenever he could, surprising everyone with his newfound fluency. Even his teachers noticed the change. "Mateo, you've improved so much," his English teacher, Señora Martinez, said, "Would you like to help organize an English-speaking club at school?" Mateo's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. I'd love to." Tight. The club, which they named Breaking Barriers, quickly became popular. Students of all ages joined, eager to practice their English in a supportive environment. Mateo made sure the meetings were fun and engaging. They played games, watched movies, and even held mock debates. Mateo often shared his own experiences, encouraging others to embrace their mistakes and keep trying. One day, a shy girl named Sofia joined the club. She reminded Mateo of his old self, hesitant, nervous, and afraid to speak. During the first meeting, Sofia barely said a word. Mateo walked over to her and said, "I know how you feel. I used to be just like you, but trust me, it gets easier. We're all here to help you." Sofia looked up at him, her eyes filled with hope. "Really?" she asked. "Really," Mateo replied with a smile. "Just take it one step at a time." Over the next few weeks, Sofia began to open up. She started with simple sentences, and soon, she was participating in group discussions. Mateo felt a surge of pride every time he saw her progress. He realized that by helping others, he was also reinforcing his own confidence. As the months went by, Mateo's reputation grew. He became known as the boy who had broken the hesitation habit and inspired others to do the same. One day, he received an unexpected invitation. The local community center wanted him to give a talk about his journey and the importance of confidence in language learning. Mateo was nervous at first, but he remembered the lessons he had learned. He spent days preparing his speech, practicing in front of his family and friends. On the day of the event, the community center was packed. Mateo took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. "When I was younger," he began, "I was afraid to speak English. I thought my mistakes would define me, but I've learned that mistakes are just stepping stones to success. They help us grow and become better versions of ourselves." He shared his story from his first hesitant conversation with tourists to his triumphant presentation in America. The audience listened intently, many nodding in agreement. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. People came up to him afterward, thanking him for his inspiring words. One elderly man approached Mateo with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he said. "I've been afraid to learn English for years, but your story has given me the courage to try." Mateo felt a lump in his throat. "You're welcome," he said. "Remember, it's never too late to start." As Mateo walked home that evening, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come so far, not just in his language skills, but in his personal growth. He realized that breaking the hesitation habit wasn't just about speaking English. It was about believing in yourself and taking risks. The following summer, Mateo's town was once again filled with tourists. This time, Mateo didn't hesitate. He walked up to a group of visitors and said, "Welcome to Spain! Can I help you with anything?" The tourists smiled, and a conversation began. Mateo felt a sense of joy as he realized how far he had come. He was no longer the boy who hid in the background. He was Mateo, the boy who had found his voice and was helping others find theirs. And so, Mateo's journey continued, a testament to the power of courage, perseverance, and the belief that anyone can break the hesitation habit, one word at a time. As the summer rolled on, Mateo's confidence continued to grow. He became a familiar face in the town, often seen helping tourists with directions, recommending the best local restaurants, or simply chatting with them about their travels. His English improved with every conversation, and he even started picking up phrases in other languages from the tourists he met. It became a game for him, learning how to say hello or thank you in as many languages as possible. One afternoon, while Mateo was sitting at a cafe with his friends, a group of tourists from Australia walked in. They were laughing and chatting loudly, clearly enjoying their vacation. Mateo's friends nudged him. "Go talk to them," one of them said. You're the English expert now." Matteo hesitated for a moment, but then he smiled. "Why not?" he said, standing up. He walked over to the tourists and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Matteo. Welcome to our town. Are you enjoying your trip so far?" The Australians were friendly and immediately invited him to join their table. They talked about everything: soccer, music, and even the differences between Australian and Spanish culture. Matteo found himself laughing and joking with them as if they were old friends. At one point, one of the tourists, a woman named Sarah, said, "Matteo, your English is fantastic. How did you get so good?" Matteo grinned. "Lots of practice and a lot of mistakes," he said. "But I've learned that the more you speak, the easier it gets." Sarah nodded. "That's so true. You should come to Australia someday. You'd fit right in." The idea stuck with Matteo. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about it. What if he actually went to Australia? It seemed like a crazy dream. But then again, so had the idea of speaking English fluently just a year ago. He decided to talk to his family about it. Over dinner, Matteo brought up the idea. "What if I went to Australia next summer?" he asked. "I could work on my English, learn about a new culture, and maybe even find a job there." His family was surprised, but supportive. "It's a big step," his father said. "But if anyone can do it, it's you, Matteo. You've already proven that you can overcome any challenge." With his family's encouragement, Matteo began researching how to make his dream a reality. He discovered a program that allowed young people to work and travel in Australia for up to a year. It was perfect. He spent the next few months saving money, filling out applications, and preparing for the adventure of a lifetime. When the day finally came, Matteo stood at the airport with his family, his suitcase packed and his heart racing. His mother hugged him tightly. "We're so proud of you," she said. "Remember, no matter how far you go, we're always with you." Matteo nodded, fighting back tears. "I'll make you proud," he promised. The flight to Australia was long, but Matteo spent the time imagining all the possibilities ahead of him. When he landed in Sydney, he was greeted by the bustling energy of the city. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The skyscrapers, the harbor, the iconic opera house. It was all so exciting and overwhelming at the same time. Matteo's first few weeks in Australia were a whirlwind. He found a job at a cafe, where he practiced his English with customers and co-workers. He made friends from all over the world, other travelers who, like him, were exploring new places and cultures. On his days off, he explored the city, visited beaches, and even tried surfing for the first time. It was challenging, but Matteo loved every moment of it. One day, while working at the cafe, Matteo noticed a group of tourists struggling to order. They were speaking Spanish, and the barista was having trouble understanding them. Matteo stepped in and translated for them. The tourists were so grateful that they invited him to join them for lunch. As they talked, Matteo realized how far he had come. He was no longer the boy who hesitated to speak English. He was now the person who could bridge languages and cultures. Months passed, and Matteo's confidence continued to grow. He even started a blog about his experiences, sharing tips for learning English and stories about his travels. His blog gained a following, and he received messages from people all over the world who were inspired by his journey. One day, Matteo received an email that made his heart skip a beat. It was from a language school in Sydney, inviting him to speak at an event about his experiences and how he had overcome his fear of speaking English. Matteo was thrilled but also nervous. This was a big opportunity, and he wanted to make the most of it. He spent weeks preparing for the event, writing and practicing his speech. On the day of the event, he stood backstage, his hands trembling. He took a deep breath and reminded himself of how far he had come. "You've got this," he whispered to himself. When it was his turn to speak, Matteo walked onto the stage, the spotlight shining brightly on him. He looked out at the audience and began. "When I was younger," he said, "I was afraid to speak English. I thought my mistakes would define me, but I've learned that mistakes are just stepping stones to success. They help us grow and become better versions of ourselves. He shared his story from his first hesitant conversation with tourists in Spain to his adventures in Australia. The audience listened intently, many nodding in agreement. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. People came up to him afterward, thanking him for his inspiring words. As Mateo walked out of the event that night, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come so far, not just in his language skills, but in his personal growth. He realized that breaking the hesitation habit wasn't just about speaking English. It was about believing in yourself and taking risks. And so, Mateo's journey continued, a testament to the power of courage, perseverance, and the belief that anyone can break the hesitation habit, one word at a time. After his inspiring speech at the language school event, Mateo's life took an exciting turn. His blog gained even more followers, and he started receiving invitations to speak at schools, community centers, and even online webinars. People from all over the world reached out to him, sharing their own stories of overcoming fear and learning new languages. Mateo felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that his journey was helping others. One day, while scrolling through his messages, Mateo noticed an email from a well-known travel and language magazine. They wanted to feature his story in their next issue. Mateo couldn't believe it. He had gone from being the boy who was too afraid to speak English to someone whose story was being shared in a magazine. He immediately called his family to share the news. "Mama, Papa, you won't believe this," he said excitedly. "A magazine wants to write about me." His mother's voice was filled with pride. "Oh, Mateo, we're so happy for you. You've worked so hard, and now the whole world gets to see how amazing you are." The magazine feature was a huge success. Mateo's story touched the hearts of many readers, and he received even more messages from people thanking him for his inspiration. One of those messages was from a language school in Spain, inviting him to come back home and work with them as a language coach. Mateo was torn. He loved Australia and the life he had built there, but the idea of returning to Spain and helping others in his own community was incredibly appealing. After much thought, he decided to accept the offer. It felt like the perfect way to give back to the place where his journey had begun. When Mateo returned to Spain, he was greeted with open arms. His family threw a big welcome home party, and his friends from the Breaking Barriers Club were thrilled to have him back. The language school, where he would be working, was just as excited. They gave him the freedom to design his own program, focusing on building confidence and breaking the hesitation habit. Mateo's classes quickly became the most popular at the school. He used creative methods to teach, like role-playing, storytelling, and even karaoke nights where students sang their favorite English songs. His students loved his energy and his belief in them. "Mistakes are just stepping stones," he would say, echoing the words that had guided him on his own journey. One of his students, a shy teenager named Carla, reminded him so much of his younger self. She struggled to speak in class, often hiding behind her notebook. Mateo took her aside one day and said, "Carla, I know how you feel. I used to be just like you. But I promise, if you keep trying, you'll get there. And I'll be here to help you every step of the way." With Mateo's encouragement, Carla began to open up. She started participating in class, and soon she was one of the most active students. Seeing her transformation filled Mateo with pride and reminded him why he had come back. Years passed, and Mateo's impact continued to grow. He expanded his program to other schools and even wrote a book about his journey, titled Breaking the Hesitation Habit. The book became a bestseller. Swing and Mateo traveled around the world, giving talks and workshops. But no matter how far he went, he always made time to return to his hometown, where it had all begun. One summer evening, Mateo sat on the beach, just like he had done so many years ago. The waves crashed against the shore, and the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. He thought about how much his life had changed and how grateful he was for every step of the journey. As he sat there, a young boy approached him. "Excuse me," the boy said in hesitant English. "Can you help me? I'm trying to learn English, but I'm scared to speak." Mateo smiled. "Of course, I can help you," he said. "Let me tell you a story about a boy who was once just like you." And so, Mateo's story continued, not just as his own, but as a source of inspiration for countless others. He had broken the hesitation habit, found his voice, and helped others find theirs. And in doing so, he had created a life filled with joy, purpose, and endless possibilities. If you enjoyed today's story and found it helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We've got so many more inspiring stories, practical tips, and fun lessons coming your way to help you master English and boost your confidence. And hey, if you're feeling extra motivated, leave a comment below and tell us, what's one mistake you've made while learning English? And what did you learn from it? We'd love to hear your stories and cheer you on. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, every step you take is progress, and we're here to support you every step of the way. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in yourself. You've got this.